Hey everyone, welcome to Resilient and Rowdy. This is your host, and my special guest today is Michael Ramos. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. It's good to be back.
Yeah, of course. So, we're going to just jump straight into it and congratulate you on the 1 year anniversary of your book, The After. I have it here for the audience to see. Very nice.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So,
And
yeah, congrats on 1 year.
thank you. It's been a fun year. It helped me get a job.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, it's funny because people, I think I said this last time too, but people will still ask, like, how's the book doing? And what they mean is, how are your sales? Which they
Oh,
could be better. I would like them to be more. But one of the things I always say is, but it's doing the thing it's supposed to be doing. I get emails from people with some regularity. I'm not getting inundated with emails, but we're like, hey, I just want to say I read your book. It was beautiful and really hard to read. And thank you.
yeah.
And it comes and goes in those waves where it's just people are just like really glad to have read it. They've passed it on to family members or they bought it for family members. I get to meet new people. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And hopefully it just continues the momentum. Just sometimes it's not always out there.
Mm.
But I think today would be a great day to kind of dive into it, especially like on the anniversary of it. So, one, I applaud you for putting yourself out in that journey. And two, I will say that I read it and I cried and it took me a while to get through. But knowing you and knowing like the message that you wanted to portray and put out there and just also just share your insights without I guess glamorizing it. It's just full-fledged truth, perspective, and I can really appreciate and admire that. So I would hope that my audience and anyone else listening can kind of pass this book on because that's just one way that y'all want to support veterans, you want to support the troops. Well, this is just one way to do it. I think it's a good sized book. And I felt like I owe it to you. You're putting yourself out there. You put some very vulnerable thoughts out on paper, and especially to publish that. So when I finished it, like I said, it did take me a lot longer. I was like, damn, I want to give you feedback. I want to share what I think. But I was like, dude, I am crying. And this is crazy because sometimes I feel like between the branches, we all give each other shit and all that. And, oh no, we're not like the Air Force or like the Navy and commentary about that. But it was just crazy how much I could relate, or I would get these like glimpses or like flashbacks of not even my own stories, but of stories that my friends have told me. And to see you write them out in a way that was truthful yet beautiful but like insightful, it really put me in there with you. So I was not expecting that, so that's why I feel like it took me a little longer to finish it, but it was very thought provoking, and I think really cool to just see, especially like your era of time in the military, to see that. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I did my reviews. I was telling you before the episode started, I was supposed to do a book review. So that's on me for being a shitbag, but
Yeah,
it's just hard. I think I've only done one book review before, or like a formal book review. That episode is obviously down, but this one was a lot harder because I'm like, oh, well, I'm Army and he's Navy and you're a little older, but you were the era that trained me. So I thought that was pretty significant, but I'll touch on my thoughts and like what I wrote down here in a little bit. But I mean, looking back on it now with a year passing, how do you feel about putting it out there and then receiving the feedback and people reaching out to you? Like, how has that all felt for you based on more so like the emotional side of this is a very vulnerable thing that you put out there? How are you feeling like its impact or its message? And how are you dealing with that as well?
Yeah. So I think it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, which is making people think. I'm not surprised that you cried or that you were emotional. I get that a lot, actually, that people thought that they had suppressed some stuff. And then they were like, oh, actually, I didn't suppress that at all. In fact, I haven't dealt with it at all. Thanks for bringing it up, dickhead.
Right? Excuse me?
Yeah. But that's part of who we are, right? As a culture, that's just how we talk to one another. But also, like, they're also, hey man, thanks for being vulnerable. I was talking with Andrew Koval on his podcast and we were talking about it. And I was really blown away when you wrote about your own suicide. He's like, one, it was really artfully done. You're very much a writer. Like, you're an artist. But like, that takes a lot to put it on the page.
Yeah.
That's out there forever. And I'm like, well, yeah. I was like, it's like what I told my editor, Kate, and I think might have said it last time. It's like the whole reason I wrote the book is because I got tired of people killing themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the reason that people kill themselves, I'm not 100% convinced that it's the weight of the trauma so much as it's the weight of the loneliness. And
Yeah.
it's the weight of I don't have the dude that's going to give me some really nasty sanity check, horrible joke that's going to make me laugh and snap me out of it, or be like, hey, quit being a bitch, ruck up.
Yeah.
In love, I think that's the thing that does it. And so I figured that if I can tell my story, then, and it's not the story, but it's one of many stories, but then maybe somebody would be like, oh, well, okay, I'm not alone. I can probably make it at least another day or another 2 days. And then 2 days becomes 3, becomes 5, becomes 7.
Yeah.
And then we get there.
Yeah.
I think that that's just the most important thing. And I get feedback from all kinds. I've gotten feedback from spouses and from brothers and sisters. Vietnam, a lot of Vietnam vets have reached out, or the spouses of Vietnam vets
Oh
have
my
reached out
gosh.
and being like, I read your book and it explains my husband won't ever talk to me. And I know he's not ever going to talk to me, but I sort of understand why he doesn't talk about it anymore. And so I can let that go. People are like, thanks. And this one woman was like, thank you for writing it, because now I have an insight into my husband that I didn't have before.
I feel like the Vietnam era will always just strike a chord with patriots, Americans, historians, and especially veterans. And I think that's like the biggest pull of seeing so many veterans get into the creative space and applauding them for it, because it's a way to, you can put the gun down, but you can pick up a pencil, you
Yep.
can pick up the paintbrush. And like you said, will help someone feel less alone. And especially with your era in the military, it's seeing an, respectfully, an older veteran who is living their best life, who is still alive, who is taking it day by day, sometimes too. And I think that really puts things into perspective of, okay, I read this book. He deals with this consistently or seasonally. We have those like seasonal depression waves and stuff, but it really puts it into a perspective that somebody struggling with their thoughts and their memories and stuff is, oh, wow, well, look at Michael. He's 40 something. He's married. He's happy. He's got the kids. He's got the house. He's got this creative, fun outlet. He's expressing himself. He's just living his best life the way he sees fit. And that's the freedom of getting out of the military, is that you can enjoy the memories and the people that you met and stuff, but then there's this next chapter. And I feel like there's a lot of transitioning veterans who get scared or caught up in that in between. And so it's just been really cool for me to see this influx of creativity, because I know that there's healing behind it. So like you said, it's helping people see that they're not alone, and that especially in a more like honest context, like a lot of folks generally look to like the SEALs and the Green Berets and Mars or whatever, and not to discredit them at all, but you are a more relatable person, because not everyone in the military worked with those groups. If you did, that's a huge honor, but if you didn't, that's the norm. This guy could have been in my formation, and here he is talking about stuff that I can relate to. So I'm really glad that you got that feedback. Also, I love that Vietnam veterans and spouses also came through. I think that's really cool. I don't know why I feel like I pictured, oh, the text is so small. Did you do big text?
We
No.
did not. It's
Maybe they have glasses. They've got good
well, I
glasses.
mean, there it is on that, or if it's on Kindle and they have a Kindle, then they can do the
Oh, cool,
larger
cool,
text on Kindle.
cool. Yeah.
And I think that also it doesn't bother me anymore that I am an older vet. I was talking to my other buddy, Eamon Shoemaker. We're friends, but we met through a mutual friend. And he was in that bridge between Iraq and Afghanistan. He did one in Iraq and one in Afghanistan. And he was 2'8". And he showed me a text message on his phone. Look how I saved you in my phone, Michael, from the invasion. And it was just like, it's weird to be part of an iconic generation, especially not only is it the year anniversary of the book, but it's also the anniversary of the invasion this month.
Oh, true.
It's like, and so it's this weird confluence of things. I found my journal from that time, and I've got a group chat with some of my engineer buddies that I deployed with. And I was like, hey, on this day, so-and-so messed this up. And you remember when they did health and comforts in the middle of Kuwait because they were looking for this piece of gear, and 2 weeks. And then on this date, we were parked by the side of a river in Iraq. And it's really weird. And like, I tell people like, oh yeah, I was in the invasion. They're like, wait, so is it true that you didn't really have armor? I'm like, yeah, it was really true. We didn't have armor. Like I had sandbags. That was my up armor, was sandbags at the bottom of my vehicle. The end. And they were like, well, what happens if you would have gotten hit? I'm like, well, what happens when you get hit is what would have happened if you got hit. Like there would have been a lot of sand everywhere and lots of other stuff too. It's just, you don't think about that kind of stuff. Like even my wife, she was in Ramadi for a year. And even that difference, she's like, yeah, she's like, but I never had to go outside the wire. She's like, the air conditioning didn't always work, but we had air conditioning. Like we had the cans, we had chow halls. She's like, you guys were living like dirty, like old school warrior class, organic, stealing from the land, living off of the land. There you go. I was like, yeah, it was. And even my brother, who ended up joining the Guard, who was a Navy corpsman in the same battalion as me in the invasion. And then he went back and did one more. And I want to say Garma, but that's not right. Anyway, and now when he deploys, he went on deployment to Kuwait, and like he was posting all the 5Ks that he was doing and pictures of him at the pyramids with him and his soldiers. He's a Bradley driver, I think. And he's like, it's different. There's a lot. We did not have the things that we have now. He's like, I'm not complaining. I like the luxury, but man, it was rough. There's one essay I never wrote, and maybe it'll go in the next book. I don't know if I talked about this in the last time I was on here, but we had a staff sergeant. His name was Staff Sergeant Wood, and he was Motor T. And so it was Motor T operator, or he was just the administrator. And we were on an army base, and we were watching the soldiers walk by eating ice cream. And I was like, hey, Staff Sergeant, can we go get ice cream? He's like, fuck no. Marines don't need ice cream. This is why you're Marines. I was like, but I want... okay. I was like, whatever. I was like, he's this big giant dude. And I was like, and me and my buddy, I think Caressel was there. We were just like, well, how can we get ice cream?
That just gives me flashbacks to the movie with, what was it, Johnny Knoxville, like The Ringer, right? He's like, when the fuck did we get ice cream?
Yeah. I was like, what? But it's here. Why can't we have, like, why can't we have
okay. Kind of like, I'm not sure if they played that mind game with y'all going through like basic, but it's like when the drill instructors would like joke with you to, oh yeah, help yourself to ice cream, eat what you can while you can. And there's always that one that falls for getting the ice cream, and then they get smoked, and then they end up throwing it up anyway. So
yeah, well, this was on Doha. So like these were regular soldiers, and we were kind of giggling because like they had their one hand in their pocket, they were eating their ice cream cone while they're walking. And of course, back in my day, you don't have your hand in your pocket, and you definitely don't eat and walk at the same time.
Right.
We're just like, but they have ice cream, and he's like, no, we have work to do. And so we didn't get ice cream, and like we got to, like, there was the PX. We didn't get to go into the PX. Like we didn't get to do any of that stuff because they didn't want to soften us. And I was like,
which I can understand, but sometimes a little treat improves morale.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing with the Marines, though. They don't want your morale improved. They want you to be as angry as possible all the time.
In retrospect, that's why I feel like y'all have higher rates of suicide.
Yeah, because we didn't get ice cream. That's
yeah, no, really. You could have had a moment of joy and just bonding with your platoon. It's the little things. It's like the smoke pit, but it's ice cream.
But it's ice cream. I'm not gonna let this go because I'm gonna write about this or something but
we should.
But it's so funny. Like those are the little things that we remember, and I think that's one of the things that, I mean, even though that specific story didn't make it into the book because it didn't fit in any of the essays that I was writing, but I think that for me is the thing that I think is what makes the book work. Is I'm not sensationalizing everything. I'm not telling the CNN version. I'm not telling the war movie, the rah war movie version. I'm like, I had to dig a hole, take a shit.
Well, I will say that I think that is needed and that is appreciated because there's so many young, impressionable folks that are enlisting or commissioning, and they're consuming media that is a false narrative. And then they get in, and even I get DMs. They're like, hey, what? And I'm just like, yeah, I mean, you were following influencers. You're following people that benefit off of you enlisting or commissioning. They're just like recruiters. They're going to lie to you, or a day in their life is definitely going to look very different than yours. But that adds to that, maybe the resentment of, oh, I thought this was going to be like this, but it's actually like that. There's people that will only do their one contract or fulfill their commission contract and just get out. And I'm like, they're constantly talking about this retention problem. And I'm just like, well, yeah, because there's just so much BS put out right now. And I'm be one, be fucking for real. And two, yeah, be fucking for real. And I think it'll be better because that way people can walk into the Navy or the Marine Corps knowing what's up and be like, okay, yeah, this is rough right now, but it'll get better as I become more like knowledge based on my job and get some rank. It does get better. There's always going to be the BS and the tomfoolery and the green weenie, but at least it's not a huge shock to them because it's already like a culture shock going through training and stuff.
I think people just get sold this thing. And I mean, I joined, obviously, the internet was still a baby. I remember getting on dial-up at Camp Pendleton. It was the first time I ever had a computer of my own in my own house. It was after I joined the service, right? Well, and even back then, one of the famous posters that was everywhere for the Marines was like, "We'd never promised you a rose garden." And you understand that it's gonna suck. And now everybody, it looks cool, it's sexy, it's packageable, it's digestible. And then you get out and people try to have a conversation with you, and it wasn't like that at all. Not even a little bit. Like, people, like the show Generation Kill, wildly inaccurate. I mean, even for television, wildly inaccurate. And I know because those dudes lived like 2 hooches down from me, and the dudes that got blown up were my guys. Those were my Marines. Ages were wrong, all this other stuff. But one of the things, I think it has this idea, and people will watch it and be like, do they really speak to each other like that? I'm like, that's the cleaned up version. That's the nice version. That's like our version of PG rated. It's pretty close, but like it's way worse. Like I can't, like I was talking to the dude that I signed his book, and I'm like, yeah, the recon dudes live down a couple doors down from us. I was like, and they used to catch these huge, they look like 2-quart canteens with legs. I don't know what kind of lizards they were. I've not been able to find them. They taught them how to smoke. And like they would just sit out there with these dudes, these little lizards on leashes, and they would have fights with the lizards and the scorpions and all this. I was like, I can't describe to you other than through writing it. Like, and even then, it like you don't understand. And that's, some of that stuff's funny, but you also don't understand the privation. Like, you don't know what not having something is, and they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you what it's like to go without. They're not going to tell you, hey, you're giving up your rights as an American so that you can protect the Constitution of the United States. And I think that's something that people have forgotten, that everybody goes in and says, oh, I have my rights. No, actually, you don't. When you signed that contract and you raised your hand, you gave those up. At least that's the way it was when I came through. That's how I was raised. Like, I remember my buddy Jay Bennington. He was a comm Marine. He was pretty much the squad leader in comm, and he would tell us that. And I remember we were in Kuwait, and there was a female journalist, and she was like, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? He's like, it's not our opinion. I don't have an opinion. We don't have opinions. And she was like, well, you're American. Surely. He's like, no, we gave up those opinions. We're here to do a job. Our job is to protect, is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and protect each other. He's like, everything else that you think that Americans get, we don't. We set that aside so that we can serve. Yeah. And the newer, this is so old guy, right? But like the newer generation, they don't, and I'm sure that the generation before me said the same thing, but it's like, I think they've lost that sense of service sometimes. Like, you're servants. I hate to say it. That's not sexy. That's not cool. That's not Upper Alpha Fitness, right? That's not high cut helmets and short barrel M4s and really cool plate carriers. But that's the truth. We're servants, and servants get shit jobs.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's where like you and I can connect, because you were the generation that trained me. I went in not necessarily knowing what the culture was going to be like, or like the tempo or the environment. And given that dose of reality, I think it sets you up for success, because that way I think you can carry yourself a little better. Like you said, there's going to be times where you go without. There's going to be times where, you just do what you can given everything that needs to be done. This isn't a Call of Duty game. Like, so you want to say you signed up for this, but then again, with all of the lies and the misconception and stuff, I don't think they really knew. No one ever really knows, but it's how you carry yourself. So it might be like just a generational thing, but I don't know. I just don't like it because, like you said, you're a servant and your needs come last. No one really cares about your opinion. You just got to do it. Yep. Kind of like how they said back then, it doesn't matter who the commander in chief is. It's just at the end of the day, that's your commander in chief. And so we had this level of just understanding of, you could be Democrat, Republican, independent. It doesn't fucking matter when you're wearing that uniform. No ifs, ands, or buts. I try to still have hope that there's people out there, there's influences out there that can better guide them than people with ulterior motives of like with selfish needs. So it's, yeah, the recruiter's going to lie to you, anything to get you through that door. Hopefully along the way, if you do commission or enlist, you find people that you can look up to. That's, I think, my main point is just, sorry, dude, you really thought this was going to be like Call of Duty. Please stop taking pictures with your face blacked out and your BFA removed. I know where you're at.
Yeah.
Stop trying to act hard. Like,
Yeah.
you need to be smoked more. I learned so much after being less dense and stubborn and hard-headed because I'm young. There's a lot that we can all learn from each other. So if people want to have that insight, I think this book and other things that they can immerse themselves in would be a great way to do that. And like you said, even like people who have siblings or have cousins in the military, it's a very descriptive way. And I hope that they're like kind of painting that imagery because I feel like you did a really good job describing these things. Like, I felt like I was there, like with some of the smells and the things that you detailed. I was just like, wow, yeah. And it's like that beautiful moment of like connection that I felt reading the book for sure.
Well, thank you. I think too, like you said about learning things, that's the funny thing too. We forget, like we get out. I think that's the other problem is we forget who we are. And I wrote that book for us to remind us who we are, right? Like we are still warriors. The United States government spent a lot of money on us, on all of us collectively, sending us to a lot of different schools, making us go to those lame ass trainings. Hey, like you're going to make it. You can, it was a huge pain in the ass then, but it was giving us the skills to figure it out.
Yeah.
And to keep going. And I think that when we talk to each other, and it's just nature, right? And I think it's part of what happens when you come out is your SEPS brief is like, all right, well, go back home, have a good time, go back to your friends, do the thing, move forward, don't look back. I understand the idea behind it, but if you've not been in our shoes, like that's the worst thing in the world to tell somebody. It's funny, you probably haven't, but even the shitbirds probably are like GI Joe now after a really bad hitch or after getting a BCD or whatever. I hate this fucking army, I hate the Marine Corps, I hate this everything. And then like they got 2 American flags on Instagram and they're like, I loved being in. It's like, what happened? Where is the disconnect? And it's because they're nostalgic for it. They miss the camaraderie. I don't think they have in the civilian world. I mean, even now I'm a professor. I am a mentor to undergraduates and graduate students. I've got friends now, but even myself, I'm just like, we rolled up on a car accident the other day. And what did I do? I told my wife to stop the vehicle, hopped out, triaged and assessed, waited until the cops got there. And I was like, I kind of miss this kind of sense of purpose and being able to do this kind of stuff. Got in my car, went and did my own little thing. I don't remember what we're doing, but I don't know, man. I think that just we need to remember who we are. And I wrote part of that for us so that we would remember it's okay to want a sense of purpose and actually care about stuff. There's this idea I don't care about anything. Well, actually, that's not true.
Yeah, I think especially like lately and with the rise and downfall of social media is I'm constantly seeing content that's like main character energy and you don't owe anybody anything. And when you apply that perspective into the military, it doesn't work that way. Like you are a team, you are a unit, you are a part of something bigger. And then it's up to you as you transition out into the civilian world to find your place. And it's okay if it's not this badass rocker and railroad tracks, a gold leaf, whatever. You can find purpose and duty and honorable work as a father.
Yep.
As a good neighbor, as a good friend, as a hard worker. There's so many good things that can come from your military service. And I do understand that disgruntled part. I think maybe everybody might go through a period of that, and that's fair. And so you just kind of got to be a little patient with your friends that are kind of going through that. But I would hope that there's still an ounce of humility and selfless service within that heaviness in your chest of, okay, this is over. So many good things can come from this. And then for civilian folks that didn't serve, this is where society has taught us to be so hyper independent and individualistic that there is no community for you to join. And so it takes just a bit of courage to just stand up and do something different. Be a little more involved in your neighborhood, be involved in your community. If you keep complaining about your HOA, oh my God, how about you join the HOA and try to implement some good change or just something? Volunteer to coach your kids' baseball team. You think of them as small, but there's ways to get involved and to make waves of influence and camaraderie and in so many ways. But yeah, I really hate to see it with my own folks. They get out of the army, and I have a lot of people message me, and I'm just like, dude, you are angry. I think you're angry at the wrong person, at the wrong thing. But if you work through those things, and that's why I brought up like more veterans getting into the creative space or just finding healthier outlets, because obviously it's pretty apparent that so many people struggle with risky behaviors, alcohol and drugs and stuff. So I think that's the thing that I can admire most about this current wave and age of veteran and military community. So I guess, like, with that being said, you got some feedback. It's been a year, and you brought up how there was a story that you didn't include. Looking back, are you still feeling good about it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a writer, so nothing's ever done. Like,
true.
I just got tired of working on it and sent it off, and my editor was like, "Bro, we have to go to print. You can't keep working on this." I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I'm not unhappy about the book. I'm not unhappy that everything, and that's part of the craft, right? Like we would say, you're a school trained sniper, you're a school trained whatever. Like I'm a school trained writer. Like I went to school for this. So like
Yeah.
next semester, I'm teaching a class called Curating the Details, where we're gonna
Mm.
teach students how to decide what goes into an essay or a poem or a short story or a longer book. Like how do you make those decisions? How do you decide what's interesting versus
Okay.
what's fluff? And like
Yeah.
I do, so this book I'm pretty excited about that it is the way where it is because I worked really hard on it. And when I first got out of graduate school in 2016, and people were complimentary and, oh, you're writing so good, this is ready to be a book now. It was absolutely not ready to be a book then.
Yeah.
And if you had asked me this question 10 years ago, a year later, I'd be like, yeah, I probably would have disavowed that book. I probably would have done things a little bit differently. Like The Red Shoes, for example, is a great
Ooh.
example of that. I wrote that essay in 2016, and I wrote it, the Harris Teeter, not the one that you can go get drunk at, but the Harris Teeter closer to my house that does not have the bar. And there was this dude rolling out of the KW cafeteria in camis. And I was enraged, is the best way to put it, for no reason. The fact that he was wearing Mart hats. And I was
Mm.
furious and angry. And I wasn't really angry at him. I wasn't really angry at anybody. But when I wrote the original draft, it was very angry. At the sentence level, it was pretty right on. I know how to write a sentence. But at the emotional resonance level, it was just an angry piece. And it was basically like, you guys don't understand why this matters to me. This is fucking stupid. I'm done. It took me 6 years to finish that essay. From the time I wrote it in 2016 till right before the book got published in 2022, when my editor was like, all right, I think we're ready to go. And when I finished that essay, I knew the book was where it needed to be. So like you have the version you have now is where I identify with the female lead of the movie. And that was not it was only the two men. It wasn't until I had grown up a lot. And
Mm.
I say that as somebody who, so think about being grown up, right? Like I left the military at 34 years old. My son was already a teenager. My son's 26 years old, and him and his
Mm.
wife just bought a house. Like I am a grown man, and I still need
Mm.
to grow emotionally as a person to be able to write that essay and realize that it wasn't about that dude wearing a uniform that he didn't earn. It was about me not being able to put that identity down. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that was harmful.
That's kind of what I wanted to ask, because I know how I feel when I put a podcast episode out, or even when I make my silly videos online or something, or I'm just yapping about something and I'm just like, oh, I forgot this and I forgot that. So I was just wondering if, because I think this is a great book. I think you did great. But knowing the creative process, it's like you want to know, it's, well, what did he not include in this? And not to spoil it or anything, but I thought that would actually be a great idea of what didn't make the cut for this, and be like an interesting take of, yeah, like excerpts that didn't make it. Or if you kind of felt any of that in your creative process. I know I can be a little bit perfectionistic, and like you said, thankfully you have a publisher, like an editor, to kind of like push you. But for me, I'm just like, I will put myself out there and say that I recorded an episode, I think maybe 20 times last year, because I felt like I just couldn't get it right. So I wasn't sure if you had kind of gone through the same, But thankfully having someone on your team to be like, hey, we got deadlines, we got this. For me, it's, oh, well, this is my platform. I've got a couple episodes that are overdue. I
Yeah.
know. I was just curious if when you mentioned the ice cream story, I'm like, I wonder what else, like what did he not include?
There's a lot that I didn't include, and a lot of it I didn't include. And so for me, it's like when you're thinking about a book, like you're thinking about it, like for me, I thought about this like a lot like an album, like punk rock or gangster rap,
Ooh, okay.
or okay, so all of these things are about a specific thing. They're all about coming home. Like even the ones that are about
Oh, true.
war, they're all about coming home and all about living in the after. So like this, I touched a little bit, and it's actually, you're not the first person to ask me this. One of my colleagues, she asked me to do an interview with her for a Say magazine, which hopefully they'll take and will come out. But she was like, I feel like you didn't tell us the whole story. And she's like, is that true? And I'm like, yeah, it's absolutely true. I told you the story about coming home, but there are so many nuances and so many rabbit trails that, like, I have another book I'm working on, essays that didn't make it into this book because they just didn't fit, or
Right.
they were good, but they just weren't doing the thing I wanted to do in this book, or I had an essay that was doing it better. So I just
Okay.
killed that one. Like I've got an essay that I wrote called Shrinkage, and it makes me laugh still. And it's about what you think it is. And it starts in often Okinawa, and where my company first started, a guy named Eric Carlson. He's a big dude, big Suicide Charlie 17 tattoo on his forearm, gigantic dude. And it's like, we're in Okinawa, it's 7 a.m, the walls are sweating, it's fucking miserable, and my dick shrinking RP. I was like, cool.
What?
Why do I need to know this? It's 7 a.m. on a Monday or whatever. He's when I was a grunt, when I was teaching weapons, like I had this big veiny. I was like, nah, I don't really want to hear this. But that's like normal for people to talk about that stuff. And what he was really saying was he felt emasculated by being in an admin role. That's what he was really being,
Oh. Oh, okay. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he was a grunt.
And that is a common belief. I think even still to this day, like aren't charging war fighters and we're in a different era and they felt some type of way about that. And
Yeah.
that is important to talk about for sure.
And where I was in 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines. Like these dudes were hooking and jabbing literally 6 months earlier in Ramadi by themselves.
Yeah.
Like they went back and hooked and jabbed when my sergeant major got killed, and back to Afghanistan. Like we were in it, and he was still feeling this kind of way. Well, then I fast forward to I'm talking to my neighbor who is an Air Force dude. And okay, this is a little bit of shade, but it's funny because it's family, right? If you have civilian listeners, you can't tell this joke because you're not one of us. His wife came over, who was also a former Air Force, and she was like, yeah, he's on a real rough deployment. And I'm like thinking, oh my God, he lost some people. She's like, yeah, I guess the travel agency didn't have enough rooms in the hotel, so him and his pilot are gonna have to share rooms. And I was like, what? That's a rough deployment. I was like, get out of here. But anyways, but he was a good dude. Like he was a really great dude. He was a good neighbor. And I was going through it. I had been out for a year, maybe less. And he wanted to talk about going in on grass and getting our stuff done. And I missed my Marines and the smell of cordite in the morning. And I just missed the life. And here I was listening to this dude. And the HOA had sent me a letter saying that my trash can had to be in my garage. And I was like, absolutely not. I live in the South and it's August. I'm going to
Yeah.
die if I go in my garage. Like they're behind my bushes. You like all the civilian bullshit that like overwhelms you. So I put those two together, and that was funny. It made me laugh, but it didn't need to be in the book because it wasn't as good as some of the other essays. I didn't want skippable tracks.
You mentioned how the ice cream story, for example, it just didn't fit the vibe. And like you said, like the emphasis and the premise of the whole book is the after with coming home. But I'm glad that you are still taking the excess and the other little fun stories and making something out of that. Cause that's always the fun little memories that kind of, like the silver lining. It's, oh yeah, we were here, but our platoon sergeant treated us to some tea or something, whether it's food or like playing games, like playing a card game. You won the first round of poker after losing for 5 times. A little glimpse of hope or like a little serotonin is always good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're feeling good and accomplished and getting your praise and your roses for this book, because like I said, I can't imagine, but I can somewhat imagine what it took for you to get there and all of the work, the inner turmoil, the inner growth
Yeah.
that took for you to get to that point. So I applaud you, but I am looking forward to this next book. So you said you've been working on it. We briefly touched on that on the first episode. So like what's changed since then? Like how are you feeling? What's the status?
The status is stalled, and part of the reason it's stalled is it's a me thing, right? Like I'm a prose writer, like I write nonfiction, it's prose, but I also have a lot of heart and brain of the poet and the way they think about putting work together. And when you're a prose writer, you think of the whole book. Oh, I'm going to write my next book. I'm not that kind of writer. I'm an essayist. So I write essays and then they coalesce around a theme and then I put them in a book, which is kind of similar how a poet thinks. Like a poet doesn't wake up one day and be like, I'm going to write a book on X, Y, or Z. Generally, they'll go through a season in their life or two and then write a collection of poems and then put them together and be like, oh, I have enough poems for a book.
Yeah.
So I was trying to write a couple of books at the same time, and it just wasn't working out because I was too focused on the finished product and not focused on the way my process. I've gone back and rewritten essays or started essays that I've wanted to write that didn't fit this next book, whatever that was. Now I'm just writing essays because I'm an essayist and that's what I do. And we'll see how it turns out. Like I wrote an essay about teaching not very long ago. There's an essay at the back of this book called Hip Pocket Lecturer. And I was talking with some students. It's going to end up being an essay because they were like, well, how are you so good at this? I'm like, I literally was told what's in your pockets. Give me a class on it. I was like,
yes. Yeah. Hip pocket training. I mean,
so eventually you get used to speaking extemporaneously. You get used to being on the spot. You can talk about anything because it was either that or go get smoked. And so, but that made me really effective in a classroom.
yeah.
I know how to pivot when the vibes are off, as the kids say these days, right? And if my students aren't doing what they need to do, like I can pivot and come up with an exercise on the fly to get them involved if they thought a little bit.
That's amazing. And that's exactly what I'm talking about with just the ways that you don't realize how the military prepares you for things and making the most of it. Like sometimes I see it, especially with lower enlisted, you just try to skate by and do the least amount of work as you can. And I'm just like, dude, no, because you don't know when it's going to be gone and you won't have those opportunities. You won't be pushed to that level in any other environment. It's cool that you brought something like that, like hip pocket training, and you're using it as a professional, as a professor. And it's just like a full scale moment or something like that. The beauty of what you've learned and utilizing it, that's what makes you an effective leader and professor, and even getting into creative writing. Like just you can take that knowledge anywhere and apply it however you see fit. That's what I want more people to realize is you can bash on your service. You can be like, oh, well, these civilians don't get me or whatever. Or you can just take what you got and make the most of it.
Yeah. And I think eventually when you grow up, I think that's natural. I eventually got to the point where I was like, what the hell happened to me? Why am I so bitchy? Like this can't.
Yeah. And I think that's saying something because
embarrassing me.
you said you got out at 34.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's a grown adult man. And for even you to admit that about yourself, I think that's really just brutally honest. Like the self-awareness, I think, is key and crucial there. You said that you acknowledge that about yourself. So how did you move forward with that?
It took discipline. Like now I'm sounding like one of those Navy SEAL books, no shade, but it took discipline for real. Like I had to recognize that I was fucking being weak.
Yeah.
Like we think we're being hard, but we're being weak. Like we're not being adaptive. Like when I was on active duty, it was adapt, improvise, and overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Like anytime there was a problem, adapt, improvise, overcome. Or Message to Garcia. Message to Garcia. If you don't, are you familiar with Message to Garcia? It's a Marine Corps publication that they no longer publish. My son, who just got out of the Marine Corps almost 4 years now on his own, was saying that they don't even use it. I don't know if that's true. But Message to Garcia was a story about, and this took place during the Spanish-American War. Don't know who Garcia was, but this private had to get a message to him. And it was about how this private got the message to where it needed to go. He had no direction. He had no commander's intent, no anything. We need to lift this bombardment. I don't remember what it was, all the specific details. Take this message, get it to Garcia, make it happen. And this private made it happen. And like this idea that you have to be able to make decisions and you have to get stuff done. I was so busy pitying myself and missing the past that I wasn't doing the thing that I had been taught to do, which was
yes. Yeah, that is like the clicking point of transitioning out of the military, for sure. That's huge.
And I still haven't figured out the civilian life. Don't let the fresh haircut and the trips on Instagram fool you. I still go, what?
Yeah, no, I can totally relate to that
Like,
too.
I got to the point where, okay, am I angry? And obviously, this is me explaining, and it didn't happen this way in the moment. Generally, you just kind of intuit these things. But it was like, all right, am I actually angry at something real, or am I angry at something I haven't dealt with? I'm a nerd, right? Even though I'm from the Star Wars, I'm Gen X, so I grew up on Star Wars. And I always remember this scene when Princess Leia says to the Admiral and Darth Vader's like, the tighter your grip, you close your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. And I thought about that a lot when I hit that breaking point in the military, or in the transition between civilian to military. And really, I think transformation is better than transition, because I'm not ever going to not be a veteran. I'm not ever going to not have those skills. I mean, some of the physical ones, because my knees crack now when I walk down. So some stuff I'm transforming, not transitioning. I'm not becoming something else. I'm just
Evolving.
evolving, right?
Yeah.
Like, transition means, it makes me think of like alchemy, and like you make stone into gold or something. Like, one thing that is not cannot be another, right? Like, but like in that process, I was like, and I would tell other friends when I realized this, I was like, you're holding on so tightly to the past that you don't know what you have in the future. And I haven't written this, I've started this essay in my head. I don't know what form it's going to take yet, but like a lot of folks my age in our spot in the war, and probably for you too, like, even still, it's like the best that we could have hoped for was to die in country with our boots on, like a man or a woman, surrounded by our friends, doing what we loved.
Yeah, it's easier that way.
It's easier that way. And I think that's true. At 25, 26, 27, 28, all the way up to 34, that was what I wanted. And that made it easier. But now I'm 48. I have no problem saying how old I am. I appreciate your candor, but yeah, I'm old as shit. I'm 48 years old, right? And now that I'm 48, my son's going to be 26 this year. If I had been killed in country any of the times that I could have been, I wouldn't have seen him graduate high school. I wouldn't have seen him join the Marine Corps. I wouldn't have seen him get married. I wouldn't have taken him and his wife to Europe and watch him change his priorities from buying new cool guy gear to, hey, we should go to this country. We should go to that country before we settle down, before we have kids. Let's maybe think about this. When we have kids, we need to think, like, just watching that change, watching him become the man that he's becoming. I think about how I'm married now to my second wife and how our relationship has deepened, watching our daughter, her natural daughter, my stepdaughter, how she has grown as a woman. Like, I think about how I've gained civilian people. I used to call them acquaintances, who I would legitimately call friends. Like, I have some really good friends in my department. I wouldn't have any of that. And part of it's because humans were locked inside of time. Like, we can't see tomorrow. We can't see around the corner. And that fills us with anxiety. So all we can do is look back. And whenever you look back, it almost always looks better than it really was. Not always, but usually. And then so what happens is you get caught in that looking back. So you're not watching where you're going. You're missing what you're doing. You're missing what's right in front of you, because you can't see 10 steps ahead of you, and you would prefer what's behind you. So you're not looking at what you have right here. And I got into that habit. And it sounds like I'm super into mindfulness, and I'm not really. It's just, you start paying attention to what's going on, and you start paying attention to, is this really worth my energy? Like, my blood pressure is up because I'm having a stress response because the HOA person's being a dick. Okay, maybe the HOA person needs to have their shit pushed in. Maybe that's 100% true.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't got to be you. Or maybe you do it once and then you let it go. Right? Like, it's not, I mean, some people need to be hit.
You need to be checked. Yes. The audacity is at an all-time high.
Yeah. Like, my friends at work and we always talk about the audacity. And it's like, that person has never been told shut the fuck up before. Like, I can tell. You can tell when someone's never been told shut the fuck up by someone who's gonna beat that ass if they don't. Like, because they just walk around, there are no consequences for their actions. And there are consequences. Like,
fuck around and find out.
Yep.
Really, thank you for putting that out there. Yeah. The wishes that you had while in the service, and then looking at everything that you have now, all those little moments. There's like the waves of grief, but also the waves of gratitude that, hey, okay, I never imagined this, but this is the life I have now, and I'm super grateful, and makes you appreciate all those little things. It's like reaching this level of peace. That's what everyone wants and is fighting for. So I'm glad that you found that and that you're sharing that and you're walking the example that you're portraying. So that's what more people need to see is, yeah, you're 48, you're still living with these memories, but you're living a good life. You take it for what it is, because I think you can, and this was my issue, is you can sit and look at the past all you want and you're missing out in the present, like you said. So the past will always be there, but the present is slipping through your fingers right now. And I think that really hit me this past year with turning 30 and having to take a step back, and felt really selfish of me to pour into myself when, especially getting out of the army and getting into certain volunteer work and other things and friendships and relationships, is I was constantly pouring into other people. And then this past year I was just like, I need to pour into myself because I'm running myself thin and I'm not going to have this. I think it hit me when I started to see my dog have more white hair on his face, and my cat that I had rescued when I was in the army. I saw that his eyes were starting to get a little cloudy, and I'm like, "Oh wow." I was like, "It's been 10 years since I rescued you, since I adopted you, and what have I been doing with that time is go 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 and trying to enjoy those slow moments." But then I was like, you know what? Let me put my phone down. Let me put whatever I'm doing down and just sit with this moment and be grateful for it. And that's been huge for me. It's given me so much peace. It's been nice.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you share that, because I've definitely felt that. And I hope more people can reach that level of healing and peace as well.
I do too. The thing that concerns me is that we're kind of bitchy for as much as we talk about how strong we are and how better trained we are than your run of the mill civilians. We expect stuff to get handed to us, which is so weird because we never had shit handed to us when we were in uniform. You had to earn everything every day. And I hear a lot of folks sometimes talking like they're expecting the thing to happen. It's like, no, bro, you got to get up and you got to go get it.
Yeah.
You've got to make physical limitations aside. And I'm not discounting like real trauma and real problems that people have with mobility and a lot of stuff, but you got to want it. Again, it's starting to sound like one of the SEAL books, right? Like you got to have that mental toughness, that discipline, but you really need to have, you, even if it's not all of that, but you have to have the desire to be like, oh, I mean, I guess you could sit there and be miserable, or you could not. Like the choice is yours, but I can't make that choice for you. You can't make the choice for your listeners. Like sometimes people just have to be like, enough's enough. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, no, for sure. You get tired of your own shit. You get tired of the same repetitive thoughts, feelings, actions. And I think that's one part of the transition that I don't hear enough is you just get tired of the way things are. And so you have to make that change. This is why listening to people and their stories are so important, because yeah, I mean, we're two different branches. You've got a whole decade over me, but I'm still learning from you, because I know that while it might not necessarily be applicable to me, I might meet someone. The military veteran world is still such a small hub. Sometimes it can feel big, but you never know what the person that you're talking to can somehow help, or you can just spread that message. It's that part that I don't hear a lot in the transition process of you, whether you hit rock bottom or not. I know I personally did. That really is that catalyst that makes you want to change and put a little more effort or change your attitude. But for me personally, I think we complain because we weren't allowed to complain in the military. I still did because I'm going to talk my shit, but obviously not in front of everybody else. I had to learn that. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go cool off because this sucks right now, but we're going to get it done. And then, yeah, the entitlement is kind of weird for me. I'm almost like too humble to a fault. I'm like, given the work that I've done, I'm like, oh, well, there's this guy that got his arm and his leg blown off. Who the fuck am I to try to request for services, or that I need something because there's other veterans out there? It's like trauma Olympics.
Yeah.
But that's why networking is so important, because we can all help each other out. The entitlement is something that needs to be checked, whether it's yourself or it's buddy to buddy. I think I've had to tell some friends in a nice way, be like, hey, girly pop, sorry, not sorry, but this is what's going to come when you get out of the uniform. No one cares. No one's going to drop everything to give you whatever you need. You need to be humble enough to ask for it because attitude is everything. You can be like, hey, please, can I thank you for your time, instead of, hey, what's up? I was in the Navy. Give me this.
Yeah.
Girl, if you don't, no,
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way. So attitude is everything. And also getting out of that identity, but using that identity to better yourself.
Yeah.
It's okay. I was held to this standard. Let me keep doing that.
No, I think you're right. And that's one of the things I thought of too. Like I was torn up about especially my sergeant major who got killed. And I was like, man, if he saw me acting this way, he wouldn't have words for me. He might just put hands on me. Like he's
Yeah.
he's from that generation. He would push me through a wall. He'd be like, suck it the fuck up, ruck up, do what you know to do. You're better than that. Right. And I think about that a lot. I don't know. It's worked for me. Like, but I think people have to figure like I think you're right. Like eventually you just get tired of being sour all the time or being salty all the time. Don't get me wrong. I like a little salt. It's fine to be a little salty. But
Little
every
sazon. Yeah.
man, I mean, you can't do it day in, day out. That's just too much energy. Didn't have the energy to do that anymore. I was just like,
Yes. You get burnt out from your own BS. But I think that's just something that we want. We want better for our people. The whole disgruntled veteran thing. How the kids say it's fucking cringe. It is. Yeah. Like,
it was funny in the moment, but now it's like, all right,
please don't make it your identity. Like, real talk,
yeah,
don't make that your identity. You are better than that.
yeah,
And like you said, your sergeant major. I do that too. There's people that I admire that have either passed on. I think it's important to have people that you admire that are like in your life or that you've met, and it's like holding yourself to that standard of the person that they want you to be. He was so driven, he was so motivated, he was so just enthusiastic to just take it day by day. I'm going to carry those traits of his into my life and make him proud, whether that person be living or dead. But personally, I feel like the dead hold me more accountable. But yeah, you still want to impress your friends that are still living. But if you want to see the change in the world, you got to carry on those traits of the people that have passed on and the people that you've met along the way, and hope that insinuates and cycles more momentum of growth and healing and inspiration for other people. Because yeah, like you mentioned in the beginning of this episode, veterans deal with a lot of grief, and we carry that a lot, whether we realize it or not. And so it's nice to see veterans getting into certain spaces, especially as creatives. So I hope people enjoyed this episode, whether they decide to get into the creative space or not, whether even if it's just journaling. I'm just glad that you have been able to be a part of that message and that movement. So with the new book that you're working on and everything else, we're in the month of March, the end of March here now. Is there anything else that you're looking forward to doing or that you're currently working on?
Well, I'm currently getting excited about going back to Europe for a vacation. I will say one of the things that my job affords me is it affords me a lot of leisure time, and I get to enjoy that life. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where the process takes me and what develops as I start writing and what I can get into. I mean, as you can tell, like I don't write a traditional narrative, like those are boring to me. So I am interested to see what risks I can take and
Mhm.
and how that's going to develop and what's going to come of that.
Do you take like a journal, or do you have a note in your phone or folder in your phone that you kind of like jot things down as you're traveling? Because I feel like, especially with the architecture and the culture and the vibes of Europe, it might start like a little bit of a fire of inspiration for you.
Yeah, so I took a lot of pictures when I was there. Well, both times. I actually am still old school. I carry a Write in the Rain notebook.
No, come on. You got to upgrade to like Moleskin or
Well,
something.
I have a moleskin. I don't have them. I have a moleskin for like when I'm doing big writing. Or my wife had this one made for me, and so
Nice.
that one's cool.
Yeah.
But this doesn't fit in my pocket. And the Write in the Rains that I have are just pocket sized. They're just like
Oh, okay. So when you're on the go, okay.
literally fits in my back pocket.
Okay.
And then if there's anything there, I'll transfer it. A lot of it, this is something for me as a writer. In fact, my wife and I had a spirited discussion about this the other day, that I'm in my head too much.
Yeah.
Because I'll just get quiet and I'm like, oh, sorry, man. Like I was thinking about these sentences. So I really don't write stuff down.
Mhm.
Even though I have vet brain and I forget names and shit like that. If I'm writing something, I don't forget that down, which is really weird.
Yeah.
And so like I was just telling some students the other day that I've usually before I sit down to type, I've written them between 85 and 90% of what's going to come out. I've already written it in my head. Thoughts that I've had will come back to play. And sometimes I'll jot them down. Sometimes I've jotted them down on the phone. But like when I went to London the first time I went to the British Museum, I don't know if everybody hates on the British Museum, but my wife was laughing at me. She said, dude, you're such a nerd, because we walked into the British Museum, we went into the Egyptian Center section, and there was this statue. And this statue was like 5,000 years old. And I'm like, do you understand how cool this is? She's like, it's a statue. It's pretty cool. I'm like, no. 5,000 years ago, somebody just like you or me looked at this block of granite,
granite,
and saw something in it and made it. It's what I do as a writer, they do as a sculptor. Like that creative impulse reaches across eons and continents, and it's wild. It's so cool. And then we went and saw the Rosetta Stone, and I was like, I can't express to you. I was texting my friend Melissa Crow. She is one of my colleagues, and we're really good friends, and she worked with me at UNC Wilmington. And I was like, my writer brain is buzzing right now. I'll be back. I've got to sort all this stuff out, because it was just so much. It was like cool stuff overload. And my writer brain and my creative brain was just like, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about this? I was like, oh my gosh, stop. I went to a Roman camp that was built in 55 BC.
Wow.
Or maybe 55 AD, either way. But it's old. It's almost 2,000. It was 2,000 years old. And I was with my mate, Ben. He's British military. And we were laughing. And I was telling this story to some of my civilian graduate students. I was like, the funny thing is like, we were laughing because we were on the ramparts, or what would have been the ramparts, looking down. It's like, do you realize that 2,000 years ago, there was a Roman equivalent of a PFC and an NCO on post at balls to four, and somebody got woken up like, hey man, you're on post 12, but your hooch is like all the way across camp. And so here you are hiking all that gear, pissed off. It's raining. I was like, it's so funny that we can see those connections that way. And my civilian student was like, I love talking to you because you say stuff like that. Like I would have thought, oh, cool, Roman ruins, but you built a scene in your head.
Yes.
That is similar. I'm like, well, I didn't really build the scene in my head. It's just, I know that experience. Warfare hasn't changed.
Right. But it's also just, I mean, the ability to just take things a little more than surface level, and then especially in the creative space. But even just sharing that insight with, your friends or your wife or whoever's just with you is just so nice, because it's definitely not the norm, but it's very appreciated. I know I personally am like that. It's just, everyone's like, it's not that deep, but I'm like, actually, it is that deep. There's got to be that one friend or that one person in the group or in your life that can really, like you said, bring that imagery or the resemblance of past to modern days. I think that's really nice. So that's really cool. But yeah, I figured, I was like, okay, so you got your Write in the Rain, your little pocket notebook. Please tell me that you're not using the Skillcraft pen.
No.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
I have better pens.
Okay, good. Well, that's good. I'm so excited. I'm really glad that this book brought you the opportunity of a lifetime to teach and spread your knowledge to undergrad and grad students, but also on social media. I appreciate you putting your stuff out there too. And yeah, Europe sounds amazing. I can't wait for y'all to go again and for me to see pictures. But is there anything else that you wanted to touch on or to leave the audience with?
Nothing comes to mind. I don't have parting words of wisdom, but if you want, I could read like something short if you've got time. We've got time.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Is there something you want me to read, you think?
I think one of my favorite pieces was, what is it? It's in the first part. Oh yeah. Part 1. It's boxes. Boxes was probably my favorite. That really hit me.
It's a little, it's probably a little, well, actually it's not that long. All right. I'll read that. All right. Boxes. If I die in a combat zone, box me up and ship me home is how the cadence goes. This is the box, the CEO said at a staff meeting. Marines shouldn't be getting awards if they're operating in the box. The box is big, he said. We don't hand out awards for doing what's in your box, he said. But operating outside the box, thinking outside the box, that gets awarded. At Navy boot camp, I stand in front of a long table with my issued clothing in a green sea bag and a big empty cardboard box. Take off your shoes, the civilian man says. We take off our shoes. Put them in the box in front of you, he says. We put them in the box. Take off your socks, he says. We take off our socks. Put them in the box. We put them in the box. Put on your issued black socks. We put on our issued black socks. Take off your pants. We take off our pants. Put them in the box. We put them in the box. Take off your skivvies. We look around. What are skivvies? Underwear. We take off our underwear, put it in the box or in the trash bin. We put our underwear in the box or trash bin. Put on your issued underwear. We put on our issued underwear. Put on your blue sweatpants. We put on our blue sweatpants. Take off your shirt. We take off our shirts. Put them in the box. We put them in the box. If you have a skivvy shirt, take it off. If we have skivvy shirts, we take them off. Put them in the box. We put them in the box. Put on your white Navy PT shirt. We put on our white Navy PT shirt. Put on your blue sweat top. We put on our blue sweat tops. Take the flaps of the box and fold them down. We take the flaps of the box and fold them down. Pick up the marker in front of you. We pick up the marker in front of us. Write your name in all caps on the first line of the to box. We write our name in all caps on the first line of the to box. Write your address in all caps on the next line in the to box. We write our addresses on the next line. Write your city, state, zip code in all caps. And we do this for a while. Our RDCs, that's what we call drill instructors, come for us, take us away from our boxes. We stand in boxes. Formation, they call it, but it's a box of people in rank and file. Our boxes are mobile. We can face left, face right, face about, forward march, pass and review, pass the dignitary box. All in our boxes marching. We march to schools, to duty stations. At my first duty station, I take custody of the mount out box. I'm an RP at 1st Combat Engineer Battalion, 1st Marine Division. I guard and assist the chaplain. By guard, I mean he doesn't carry a weapon. I do. A bodyguard, a bullet sponge. By assist, I mean answer phones, take out trash, walk around the battalion, go to the field, set up religious services, and take responsibility for the mount out box. The mount out box is a 7-cube box with box with 7 cubic feet of space. The mount out box has a packing list prescribed by senior RPs and other officers in Washington. The 7-cube had a 30-day supply of wine, kosher and sacramental, prayer cards, prayer beads, rosary beads, Bibles, Qurans, Torahs, armed forces hymnals, candles, communion hosts, and grape juice. I had to waterproof the box to protect the contents from flooding when we put the box on a ship and the ship got flooded, or when it comes off a cargo plane and it's raining, wherever the Marine Corps has sent us. The 7-cube held everything my battalion needed to sustain its religious needs for 30 days. 30 is the magic number. We planned on not being resupplied for 30 days at our level. I think regiment's box, the next up the chain, was a 60-day box. Division's box was 90 days. All with the same stuff, just in larger quantities. My 7-cube was a green wooden heavy box with a heavy-duty lock. The lock was to protect the wine from unauthorized consumption, even though the sacramental wine was almost undrinkable. I learned to pack only what our Marines needed, not what the list from Washington said I had to have. I had 2 boxes, one for the inspection, when someone from division came to make sure my box matched the official list, and the real box, the one I took to Iraq. One day, someone from S4 told everyone to pack their boxes and mark them for embark. I was already packed. Someone from the 4 came and got my box and put it in a bigger box, a Quadcon or a Palcon maybe. I never saw it until we got to Kuwait. My box was waiting for me. I dragged that box all over Iraq. I kept an inventory of the box in my notebook. Sometimes I slept on that box. Sometimes in Iraq, we'd get priority mailboxes. Magic. These boxes can take a group of rough, tough, combat-hardened Marines, tired, hungry, and dirty from killing and protecting each other, and turn them into excited, energized little boys because they got mail. It's easy to forget that most of them are still boys. Teenagers, a few, not even 18, many not even 21, carrying weapons and the burden of killing a man and protecting his buddy, and some had the extra burden of leading and making decisions that could get a guy killed, even if they are the right decisions. But mailboxes helped make you forget all that for a second. Small and white with red and blue stripes, priority mailboxes brought fresh socks, snacks, smokes, pictures of home, and if we were lucky, soft toilet paper. Oftentimes, doting moms and loving wives would send extra items in the box because they knew we shared with everyone around us. Fun fact, those boxes smelled like home. It's easy to forget what home smells like when all you smell is sand and BO and blood and sweat and ball stink and trash. It's easy to forget home when you have a job to do, and that job requires you to wear a flak and Kevlar and carry a weapon with you all the damn time, even to the shitter, which could be a plastic box or sometimes be a hole you dug. I handed out dozens of those boxes. People would send us boxes addressed to any Marine, but I never gave them to any Marine. I gave them to my Marines. It was cool to get a box from a random American, mostly because we wanted what was in it, but also because it meant that people back home cared. This was early when the war was cool and America was pissed about the towers, and you could choke a whole city with all the yellow ribbon. Random folks sent us socks, snacks, and smokes too. We sometimes wrote thank you notes back to the people who sent us boxes. I used to look forward to getting boxes for my son filled with his schoolwork or art and the occasional handwritten note. We were supposed to burn all that stuff to protect us and our families if we were captured or tortured, of course, but I liked getting his boxes anyways. I didn't and I don't recall anyone burning mail from home unless we just couldn't carry it. When you live off what you can cram into a pack or on your back, you have to make choices. One time, the day we were leaving Iraq, and a few hours after I almost killed a man at a VCP to protect my chaplain and my Marines, one of the guys from 2nd CEB got a box, and we were standing in a box bullshit and waiting for Gunny, and we didn't see him walk up on us, and Gunny does that sometimes, sneak up on you, and since we didn't seem to notice that he was there for box time, formation, he yelled, 10, hut! And we all snapped to attention, and the poor Marine who just got in a box was holding it, dropped the box, and the contents went everywhere, and it got covered in that powdery, shitty sand that probably has a ton of chemicals that are slowly killing us now. I'll skip around a little bit. We really do box people up and ship them home if they die in a combat zone, just like the cadence says. Before Marines get boxed up, the truth is, sometimes their Marines have to go collect the parts of their buddies and put them in bags so they can be shipped to the rear to be boxed up in a nice coffin and covered with a flag. Then some Marine or maybe a doc or an RP who was also friends with that Marine has to go and box up an inventory that belonged to the Marine who got killed. The box the Marine goes in gets covered in an American flag, and then that box gets lowered into the ground while taps plays, and moms and wives and little brothers and dads and sisters sob. Sometimes we might have tears too. I don't like to think about how many people I know in boxes and how many boxes I've seen lowered into the ground. I hate those boxes. Those things sound outrageous and horrible. They are all within the box the CO mentioned earlier. Even when I got home from Iraq during PT, I would sing, "If I die in a combat zone, box me up and ship me home." We all did, even after all that. And after 9 years, 10 months, and 28 days, I left the military. TMO came and packed my everything into boxes. TMO took an inventory of my stuff, then put it in a larger box to ship it to my new home. When I got to my new place, my stuff was not waiting for me. When the movers came, they unpacked everything and took all their boxes with them. I'm a civilian now. Those boxes, the 7 cubes and ammo can shitters and mailboxes and coffins, seem like forever ago, and sometimes I can still feel and smell those boxes. For a while, I was sending my boxes to my son when he lived in California and I in North Carolina. It wasn't a war zone, but divorce isn't easy. When he was young, I used to fill his box with Legos, his favorite snacks, and a handwritten note. I'm a civilian now. My journal, a Bible, uniforms, boots, medals, ribbons, MRE postcards, some shrapnel, an Iraqi compass, service record, awards are all in a box in my closet under bags and the other things. I never opened the box those things are in. My son enlisted in the Marine Corps. Soon he will box his stuff up and send it home. He will sing about being boxed up and shipped home if he dies in a combat zone. He will get mailboxes and he might have to collect his friend's body parts and box up his friend's stuff. He could come home in a box. Or he could not. Maybe when he's older, he'll write about the boxes he sent me and the boxes I sent him as a kid and how those boxes differed from the ones I sent him when he was a Marine.
Well, I cried. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, because let's see, I underlined, I hate those boxes because I feel like even now, I have my mental and my physical boxes, like you said, things that you don't open up, and moving around so much after getting out of the army and finishing school and figuring out where to live is I still have things in boxes.
Yep.
And yeah, the mental, it's the stuff that you still carry with you, whether you want to open them or not. So yeah, that was definitely a favorite. And I was like, I already knew, I was like, after I read that one, because that was the part one, I was like, oh, I'm fucked. I'm going to cry. This is, I was like, oh, maybe it's like a cute little like coffee table book, like inspirational, feel good. I'm like, oh, fuck, this is going to be a roller coaster.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Yeah, thank you for reading that. And I hope for the audience, I hope that incentivizes y'all to buy his book, check it out, give it a chance. And maybe it might invoke you to journal or to jot down some things that you have bottled up, because it'll feel so good to just let it out. So yeah,
That's
thank
true.
you so much, Michael. And I'm really glad that we got on today and got to chat about your book. But
Thanks, Jess.
yeah,
Glad
of
to
course.
have you as always.
Yeah. Well, thank you. All right. So for the audience, the book is available on Amazon and
From UNC Press. So you can just go directly to UNC Press, Google Michael Ramos the After. Surprise, it comes up. It's really weird.
right.
But
It's a feel good moment. Don't you love that? Okay. Well, I will be sure to link that. But yeah, everyone, I will also link his social media account, his Instagram. So be sure to follow him. He's doing some good stuff with other veteran groups to encourage some creativity, some healing, and some release. So thank you so much for your time, Michael. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. Appreciate it. Thanks, listeners.